I found my sister's hidden diary, and it revealed a dark family secret Reddit stories. It all started on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of lazy, golden day that invites dust motes to dance in the sunbeams and lets time drip slow and sweet like syrup. The kind of day where nothing seems to happen until something does. And that something, for me, began with a loose floorboard in the hallway closet. But I'll get to that. First, you have to understand the kind of family I come from. On the outside, we were the textbook example of suburban normal. Dad coached Little League and fixed things that weren't really broken. Mom baked apple pies from scratch and ran the PTA with military precision. I was the only child, born late into their marriage. Some called me a miracle baby, though no one ever explained why. We lived in a modest two-story house on Sycamore Lane, the kind of house with white shutters and a porch swing that creaked when the wind got sentimental. Nothing ever seemed out of place, because everything had its place. That was the rule. That was how we lived. But as I got older, I began to notice cracks. Not in the walls, but in the narrative. Things that didn't add up, like how we had almost no family photos from before I turned 5. Or how my parents avoided talking about their own parents, changing the subject with the practiced ease of magicians. Or how there was one room upstairs that always stayed locked, the brass knob cold to the touch, even in summer. I asked about it once when I was 7. My mom told me it was just an old storage space filled with junk they'd never bothered to clean out. My dad said it was nothing and then gave me that look. Tight-lipped, eyes heavy with unsaid things. The kind of look that teaches a child not to ask again. So I didn't. Not for years. But on that Sunday, I wasn't thinking about secrets or mysteries. I was looking for the old Monopoly set because Mom had suggested a family game night and we hadn't had one in years. I ended up rummaging through the hallway closet, the one under the stairs, behind the vacuum cleaner and boxes labeled Christmas and old tax stuff. That's when I stepped on something that gave slightly beneath my foot. A sound more felt than heard, a hollow resistance under the worn wooden planks. Curiosity bloomed like a bruise. I knelt down, heart tapping an odd rhythm against my ribs, and pried at the warped edges of the floorboard. It wasn't nailed in, just wedged. It popped loose with a reluctant sigh, revealing a narrow cavity barely big enough for my arm. Inside, nestled in dust and forgotten air, was a small metal box, dented, locked. Of course, I opened it. It wasn't easy. Rust had claimed most of the latch, but brute teenage persistence won out. Inside, wrapped in yellowing tissue paper, were a handful of old photographs and a bundle of letters bound with a fraying ribbon. The photos were black and white, the kind that made everyone look like they belonged to another world entirely. But what caught my eye wasn't the vintage quality. It was the faces. In one picture, a woman who looked just like my mother stood next to a man I didn't recognize, holding a baby that was definitely not me. In another, the same man, tall, wary, with sharp eyes and a ghost of a smile, posed with what appeared to be 2 small children in a garden. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. None of these people had ever been in my life, yet I couldn't shake the uncanny familiarity that clung to every image. I turned to the letters next. The handwriting was elegant, looping, undeniably feminine. I read the first one, then the second. Then I couldn't stop. They were love letters, dated over the span of 5 years. But they weren't from my father. They were addressed to someone named Ellis, and they were signed, "Forever yours, CC." My mom's name is Caroline. I sat there, stunned, the air in the closet thickening around me. My mom had been writing love letters to someone else, someone who wasn't my father. But that wasn't the worst part. One of the later letters mentioned a decision, a choice. "I know what we did was wrong," it said. "But I couldn't let them take her. She's mine, Ellis. Ours. And they will never know. They will never know." I read that line at least a dozen times before it started to make sense in the way that changes everything. My breath caught, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Who was she? What had been done? What had been hidden? I didn't tell my parents what I found. Not that day. Instead, I started to watch them differently. I looked for tells. Little slips in the way they talked to each other, or didn't. The way they touched me, or didn't. I started sneaking into the attic at night, where I found more things that didn't belong, a suitcase with a child's name tag that wasn't mine, a birth certificate with my mom's maiden name scribbled out and a different surname typed over it, as if someone had wanted to rewrite history, but didn't know how to do it cleanly. And then there was the room, the locked one. Once you start pulling at a thread, the whole sweater begins to unravel, and that room, sealed shut like a secret wound, became the itch I couldn't scratch. I waited for the right moment. It came 2 weeks later, when my parents went out for a movie and left me home alone, trusting as always. I picked the lock with a bobby pin, something I'd practiced after watching a YouTube tutorial out of sheer boredom. It clicked open with disarming ease. The air inside was colder, stiller. It smelled of old books and something sweeter. Lavender, maybe, or decay. The room was small, sparsely furnished, but every surface was covered in things that spoke of a life paused mid-breath. A child's bed with a faded quilt, shelves lined with picture books, dolls with cracked porcelain faces, and on the desk by the window a photo, framed, preserved, dustless. A girl, maybe 6 or 7. She looked a little like me if you squinted, but her smile was crooked shy. Her eyes were darker. Her name was etched on the frame in careful cursive Isabel. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe a minute, maybe an hour. But something inside me shifted, clicked, like the sound of a lock opening or a lie unraveling. When my parents came home, I was sitting in the living room, the photo of Isabel in my lap. My mother froze when she saw it. My father went pale. No one spoke for a long time. Then my mom whispered, "You weren't supposed to find her." And just like that, the truth began to spill. Slow and syrupy and thick with years of silence. But that's another part of the story. And trust me, it only gets darker from here. My mother's face crumbled like a paper mask in the rain, and my father sat down like his knees had turned to glass. The photo of Isabel lay between us on the coffee table, the girl's lopsided smile frozen in time, while the air in the room thickened into something I could almost taste. It was the taste of answers and fear and a secret trying not to be spoken. "I need you to listen," my mother said, but her voice was already broken, like she knew nothing she said would undo what I now knew. Still, she tried. They both did. For the first time in my life, I watched my parents fall apart in front of me, word by word, as they unraveled the carefully constructed myth of our family. Isabel had been real. She had been my sister. She was born before me 6 years earlier, under very different circumstances. My mother had been engaged to someone else. Ellis, the man in the photographs, the man from the letters. They had been in love, wildly and foolishly, the way people are when they believe the world is on their side. My mother got pregnant when she was 21. Her parents, conservative and cruel in ways that only people obsessed with appearances can be, had forced her to end the engagement. Ellis wasn't suitable, they said. He had no future, no family worth mentioning, no money. And so they did what rich, manipulative families do best. They made the problem disappear. They took the baby. I sat frozen as my mother explained it, her voice trembling as though saying it aloud still hurt like the first time. Isabel was sent away, raised by distant relatives in another state, with no idea who her real mother was. My mother was told to move on, forget, marry someone acceptable. That someone was my father, who had always known the truth. But she came back? I whispered, though I already knew it. Yes. Isabel came back when she was 11. She discovered the truth by accident. Through an overheard conversation, a letter not burned, a photograph that looked too much like her own face. She found my mother. She showed up at our door, and for a time there was a fragile kind of joy, a reunion that felt like redemption. But Isabel wasn't the kind of secret that could stay hidden. She was angry. Angry that she had been lied to, erased, exiled from the life that was rightfully hers. My father, pragmatic and cautious, worried what it would mean if people found out. A child from a different man. A child who didn't fit the neat narrative they had built. So they kept her hidden, quietly homeschooled her, told neighbors she was a niece visiting long-term. But the walls of a lie don't hold forever. I asked what happened to her, why she wasn't here now, why her name was never spoken, why a whole room was preserved like a shrine to her absence. My mother didn't answer. It was my father who finally said it. She ran away. But I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way my mother's eyes didn't move from the floor. There was more. There was always more. They said it happened the winter I turned 4. Isabel had grown restless, volatile. She wanted the world to know who she was, wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops. My mother begged her to be patient. My father argued with her behind closed doors. Then one day, she was gone, vanished from her bed in the middle of the night. No note, no signs of struggle, no trail. The police were called, but they weren't told the full truth, just that a niece had gone missing. A family visitor, not a daughter, not a sister. The case went cold, and the room was locked, preserved, as if they were waiting for her to return and pick up her life right where she left it. But she never did. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe she'd simply run away, that she was out there somewhere, angry but alive. Except I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen. Not after what I'd felt in that room. Because there was something else they weren't saying. Something that lingered in the corners of that story like mildew. So I did what I'd always done when things didn't make sense. I started digging. I went back to the letters, rereading every line, every date. There were inconsistencies. Mentions of meetings that shouldn't have happened. A reference to a house by a lake we never visited. A final letter, written in frantic ink, talking about a custody fight. About taking her back. Signed not by my mother, but by Ellis. But if Ellis had taken her, why wouldn't she have contacted us? Why would the police find no trace of her? Unless he hadn't taken her. Unless he'd tried and failed. I looked up Ellis. It took some time. My mom had never given his last name, but a return address on one envelope hadn't been fully blacked out. The ink had faded, but I managed to piece together enough to find an old listing. From there, I pulled threads. Archives, news articles, obituaries. Ellis was dead. Died the spring after Isobel disappeared. Car crash, the paper said. Single vehicle. Late night. Off a bridge. But here's the thing. The crash was ruled suspicious. The brake lines had been cut. I sat with that fact like a stone in my gut. Was it an accident? Or a warning? I started to see the people around me in a different light. My parents, with their 2 perfect lives. The neighbors, too quiet for too long. Even the police report from the time felt off, full of redacted lines and no further comments. But one night, unable to sleep, I snuck back into Isobel's room. I don't know what I was looking for. A sign? A clue? Closure. What I found was a loose floorboard beneath her bed. Almost poetic, right? Inside there was a single object, a tape recorder. Old, dusty. But it still worked. There was one tape inside. I pressed play. Then a voice, a girl's voice. She sounded afraid. She said, "If you're hearing this, it means they lied. Again. I don't know who I can trust, but I'm not going to let them erase me. Not this time." The recording cut off with a sharp sound, like the door slamming, or something worse. I sat there for hours, rewinding it, playing it again as if listening harder would somehow summon her back. But it didn't. Instead, it summoned something else. That night, someone knocked on my window. 3 soft taps. I live on the 2nd floor. No ladder, no tree branches, nothing a person could stand on. Just those 3 knocks, and then a whisper. So faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it, except I didn't. Because it said my name. Not the name everyone else calls me. The name on the fake birth certificate. The name no one else was supposed to know. And then it was gone. I haven't told my parents. I don't know if I ever will. Because part of me is afraid. Afraid that if I confront them again, something else will vanish, like it did before. Or worse. Something will come back. The next morning I woke to the pale hush of dawn, as if the world itself was holding its breath. My window was still locked from the inside. I checked it twice, then a third time. No fingerprints, no smudges, nothing. But I hadn't imagined it. I knew that with the same certainty you know when someone's watching you in a crowded room. Quiet, invisible, but real enough to make your skin crawl. I didn't sleep much after that night. The whisper of my name, the name, looped in my mind like a splinter you can't dig out. That name wasn't on any school record. It wasn't the name on my driver's license. It existed only in one place, that altered birth certificate I found buried in the attic under layers of lies and dust. No one should have known it. No one alive. And yet, someone had whispered it through glass. For the next few days, I moved through life like a ghost in my own skin. At school, words blurred on the board. At home, I kept noticing little things out of place. My bedroom door ajar when I knew I'd closed it. My shoes not where I'd left them. A hairbrush missing, only to reappear 2 days later tucked neatly beneath my pillow. Things too small to prove, but too wrong to ignore. And the photo of Isabel, the one I'd taken from her room, gone. I tore apart my room, thinking maybe I'd hidden it too well. Maybe I was just forgetting. But no, it wasn't there. Something or someone had taken it, quietly, carefully. That's when I started keeping a notebook. Not for school, but for them. The whispers. The disappearances. The subtle changes that made me question if I was going crazy. I began writing down times, sounds, smells. Things that seemed irrelevant until they weren't. Like the faint scent of lavender that clung to the air after midnight. Or the way the hallway light flickered only on Thursdays. Or the recurring shadow that moved across the wall near the locked attic door, even when no one was upstairs. I started digging again. This time, not just into the past, but into the present. Late at night, I'd sneak into the attic, search every box, every crevice. My heart was always pounding so hard it felt like it echoed off the beams. One night, behind a stack of old suitcases and warped picture frames, I found a second recorder. It was smaller, older, like it hadn't been touched in years. But there was a fresh tape inside, labeled in smeared red ink, 3 days before. I hesitated, then hit play. There was a long silence, then footsteps. A girl's voice, quiet and shaky. "She's not who she thinks she is," it began. "They told me I was sick, that I made her up, that there was never another girl. But I remember her. I remember the day they brought her home. I was 7. She was loud, pink, mine. I used to hold her when she cried." A pause. Then the voice returned, more fragile. They said I was confused, that I invented her, that I had episodes. They locked me in that room, told me to rest, to forget. But she was real. She was real. The recording ended with a sound I can only describe as a breath caught in a scream. I played it over and over until I had every word memorized. There was no doubt. The voice was Isobul's. And now, the story had changed. They hadn't just hidden her. They'd erased her memory. From the world, from themselves, maybe even from me. I confronted my parents again. I waited until dinner, when they were their most vulnerable, when their guards were down and the illusion of family still felt thick enough to choke on. "What? Why did she say I was made up?" The fork froze halfway to my mom's mouth. My father's eyes narrowed like shutters in a storm. "What are you talking about?" he asked, too calm. I pulled the recorder from my pocket, pressed play, and let the voice of my sister haunt the room. They didn't cry. They didn't scream. They just sat there, silent and pale, as if the walls were closing in. When the tape stopped, my mother finally spoke. "She was sick," she said. "She had hallucinations. We did what we had to." "That wasn't a hallucination?" I snapped. She remembered me before you ever told her I existed." "Then it was worse than we thought," my father said quietly. "She was dangerous." I stood so fast the chair fell backward. She was your daughter." "We know," my mother whispered, and something in her voice cracked. Not just guilt, but fear. And that scared me more than anything else. Because if they were afraid, what had they done? That night, I didn't sleep. I locked my bedroom door, pulled a chair under the knob, and kept the recorder clutched in my hands. Sometime past 2, I heard it again. 3 knocks on the window, then a pause, then scratching, soft, deliberate, like a child dragging their nails across glass. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The sound stopped, and then whispered again in a voice just like mine. "What did you forget me?" I couldn't take it. I flung open the window, and there was nothing. No footprints, no shadow, no wind. But in the morning, written in condensation on the inside of the glass, was a name ISOBL. I scrubbed it away before my parents could see, though I doubt it would surprise them. Because now I understood. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been erased. And whatever was left of her wanted me to remember. I needed to go further. Needed something solid. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. So I went back to the attic one last time. This time, I brought tools. I tore down the insulation behind one of the walls. Something about the layout had never made sense. A dead space between rooms, like a passage that didn't lead anywhere. And that's when I found it, a false panel. Behind it, a crawl space, and inside the crawl space of bones, small, human, wrapped in a quilt that matched the one from Isabel's bed. I vomited on the floor, called 911 with shaking hands. The police came, the forensics team, the whole parade. They questioned my parents, took them away in handcuffs, and I stood in the yard, watching the house as if it might collapse under the weight of what it had hidden. But the story doesn't end there, because the DNA results came back. And the bones, they weren't Isabel's, they were mine. Or rather, they matched my DNA exactly, too exactly, identical, because what the coroner said next chilled me more than the skeleton ever could. "You didn't have a sister," he told me. "You had a twin. And one of you didn't survive." Only if I'm starting to wonder if they buried the wrong one. They tried to explain it like science, cold, sterile, stripped of horror. Monozygotic twins, the coroner said, as if that label could simplify the impossibility. Identical DNA, same face, same body, same beginning. But what about the middle? The end? What about the part where I was alive and she was buried in a crawl space like some secret shame? My parents never said a word in custody, not to the police, not to me. They lawyered up as if all of this, my missing sister, the taped up lies, the bones in the walls, could be reduced to something legal, something that could be bargained with. But secrets that deep don't go quietly. They echo. They twist in the dark, gnawing at the foundation of everything you thought was real. I stood outside our house, their house, while men in gloves carted boxes of evidence down the steps. The room, once sealed shut for years, now lay open and gutted, its pastel wallpaper stripped away like skin. And me? I was watching my own ghost be exhumed. They showed me the medical reports later, the ones they found locked in the safe beneath the basement stairs. My name on some, her name on others. Isabel. But not just Isabel. A second birth certificate with the same date, same time, same weight. A footnote in the margin, second child stillborn. No resuscitation attempt requested. Stillborn. That's what they had told the hospital. But that's not what happened. Because Isabel lived. And I wasn't the first one they brought home. There were photos in one of the sealed boxes. Not just the ones I'd found earlier. These were different. Older. One in particular caught my eye, 2 babies in matching pink onesies, lying side by side in a hospital bassinet. A nurse's handwritten tag marked with one word, "Twin." I wasn't the only child they took home, but sometime between the hospital and the second year of our lives something happened. Something broke. There were signs, even then, tucked into scribbled pediatrician notes and long-forgotten therapy files. Behavioral disassociation. Episodes of mirrored identity confusion. One child appears to imitate the other's speech and gestures. My parents had taken us to specialists, psychologists, even a neurologist, and then nothing. No further records, no more appointments. The paper trail vanished just before my 4th birthday. And that's the year Isabel disappeared. But what if she didn't vanish? What if they chose? What if they decided one of us didn't belong? I couldn't think straight for days. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. The world blurred, like someone had turned the focus knob on reality and left it just slightly out of sync. I kept hearing her voice. Not whispers now, not just in dreams, but in mirrors, in reflections that lingered too long, in the split-second glitch when you look away and your reflection doesn't. I went back to her room. The police had cleared out most of it, tagged everything with little orange evidence flags. But they hadn't seen what I saw. Not yet. There was a crack in the back of the closet, one I hadn't noticed before. Small, subtle. I pulled at it, and a panel swung open with a groan like a dying breath. Inside was a hidden alcove, a chair, a mirror, a stack of drawings, and a diary. The mirror was old, warped at the edges, the kind that doesn't just reflect your image, it reflects something deeper. When I looked into it, I didn't see myself, nautically, I saw her. Same eyes, same jawline, but something about her posture, the set of her mouth. It was wrong, too still, too calm, like she was watching, waiting. The drawings were crude but clear. Two girls holding hands, then one girl alone, the other crossed out with thick black lines. Sometimes the crossed-out girl had red X's over her eyes. Other times she was standing behind the other, her face melting into shadow. And then there was the diary. It was Isabel's, and it read like madness soaked in heartbreak. They told me I made her up, that I was the only one, but I remember her voice, her smell, her laugh. They made her forget. They erased me from her like chalk from a board. But I'm still here. I'm still here. Every night I look in the mirror and see her face wearing my skin. It's not hers. It's mine. She took my life. They let her. But I remember. I remember Avalaivigin, page after page blurred together, ink smeared by what looked like tears or blood, or both. She'd been watching me long before I knew she existed. She'd been waiting. And now, I think, she was ready. That night, I woke to find the mirror from her alcove in my room. I hadn't brought it. No one had. I stared at my reflection for what felt like hours, waiting for it to move wrong, waiting for her. But the glass stayed still, until it didn't. At 3:12 a.m., I blinked. My reflection didn't. It smiled, a slow, crooked smile I didn't make. I screamed. Threw the mirror to the floor. It didn't shatter. It didn't even crack. Instead, it hummed. Like it was alive. The next morning, it was gone, replaced with my regular bedroom mirror. I asked my foster guardian if they'd moved anything. They said no. Claimed they'd never even seen an old mirror. Acted like I was crazy. Maybe I was. But then the photos started to change. Old pictures, ones I'd kept hidden, started showing someone else. At first it was subtle, a shift in posture, a different expression. Then the changes became more extreme. In one photo, I had vanished entirely. She was there instead, wearing my clothes, sitting in my spot at the kitchen table. But her eyes, they were wrong. They weren't mine, they were hers. I tried to show someone, I did. But when I held the photo up to them, it was normal. Just me, nothing strange, nothing missing. Only I could see her, only I remembered. And she was getting stronger. Each day I felt less me. Memories began to blur. Names I should have known slipped through my grasp. I called a teacher Mom, and didn't realize until 5 minutes later. I forgot my own birthday. It was like something was rewriting me from the inside out. And then I found the last letter. It was folded into the binding of the diary, tucked in as if she didn't want me to find it until it was too late. You were always the favorite, the soft one, the one they saved. But you weren't stronger. You weren't smarter. You were just easier to mold, easier to keep. But I remember the choice. I remember the screaming. I remember being dragged down the stairs while you slept in your crib. I remember the smell of the crawl space, the silence. The dark, you had my life. I took it back. No, give me the rest. So I dropped the letter and ran. To the police, to the therapists, to anyone who would listen. They all nodded, smiled. Prescribed pills. No one believed me. But she did. Because she was me. And she was watching. Now, I don't trust mirrors. I don't sleep much. and I've started forgetting how I used to look. Sometimes I catch my reflection out of the corner of my eye and it flinches. Like it didn't expect me to still be here. Like it's waiting for me to give up or give in. But I won't, because if I do, she wins. And I disappear. Again, I used to be sure of who I was. My name, my face, my place in this world, it all used to feel solid, like bedrock beneath my feet. But now, every time I look in a mirror, it's like staring through ice, distorted, unfamiliar, wrong. And not just wrong in a superficial way. Wrong in the way a house feels after someone else has lived in it. Like everything's been moved 2 inches to the left. Like it's no longer yours. The worst part, no one around me seems to notice the difference. My friends still greet me the same way at school. Teachers still call on me like I'm present, alive, whole. But when I speak, there's hesitation behind their eyes, like they're trying to reconcile something they can't quite articulate. Like I don't sound the way I used to. Don't move the same. Don't laugh the same, because maybe I don't. Maybe she's already halfway in. I started recording myself, at first to prove I wasn't crazy. I'd sit in front of my phone and talk. Talk about the day, the weather, anything. I'd ask myself questions only I would know the answers to. Then I'd play it back and listen, searching for some hint of change. And sometimes, just sometimes, I wouldn't remember saying the things I'd just recorded. One night, I watched a video I'd made 2 days earlier. In it, I was smiling. I haven't smiled in weeks. Worse, I was wearing a shirt I didn't own, something pink with little daisies on the collar. And behind me, in the reflection of my bedroom mirror, there was movement. Something shifting just out of focus, like a second figure leaning just over my shoulder. When I turned to check, I was alone. But the video stayed the same. That night, I had the dream again. It always starts the same way. I'm standing in the hallway outside Isobel's room. The door is cracked open. Inside, there's music playing. Something slow and sad, like a music box winding down. I step inside and the door slams shut behind me. The lights flicker. The mirror on the wall ripples like water, and then she steps through. She looks just like me, but older. Hollow. Eyes too deep, like she's been living underground. She doesn't speak. She just walks toward me and puts her hands on my face, like she's trying to memorize it. Then she whispers, "Almost done," and everything goes black. I always wake up sweating, the sheets twisted around me like vines. At school, things started to unravel. I got called to the counselor's office after snapping at a teacher. I didn't remember doing it. They said I threw a chair. Cursed. Said I wasn't me. But I have no memory of that. The only thing I remember was the clock. It had stopped at exactly 3:12 p.m., the same time my window was first tapped weeks ago. The same time she whispered my name. They put me on meds. Anti-anxiety, they said, mood stabilizers, sleep aids. But none of it helped. Because this isn't a chemical imbalance. It's a possession. Not the Hollywood kind with pea soup and spinning heads. This is slower. Smarter. Like erosion. 1 grain at a time until the cliff gives way. I confronted the mirror again. I know how that sounds. But by now, I don't care. I sat in front of it for hours. Staring, waiting, I blinked. It blinked. I smiled. It smiled. But then I frowned and the reflection kept smiling. And this time, it spoke. "You're almost ready," it said. "You've done well keeping my seat warm." I smashed the mirror with a lamp. Glass flew everywhere. Blood too. But when I looked down, no cuts. When I looked back, no damage. The mirror was still whole. Unbroken. I ran. Left the house in my pajamas, barefoot, down the street like a feral thing. I ended up at the library, one of the only places left untouched by her. Or so I thought. I dove into records. Microfilm. Newspaper clippings. Anything about my family, the house, the neighborhood. I needed something to prove she was real. That this wasn't all in my head, and I found it. An article from 17 years ago. Omwe esta eiros nnf at DATT rice SQSTO house. The photo was of our house. The byline was blurry, but the story was chilling. A neighbor had reported strange sounds and 2 babies crying at once, even though only 1 child was ever seen in public. When questioned, my parents claimed it was the television, a misheard noise. But then a week later, a private tip was called in. An unmarked grave was suspected somewhere on the property. The investigation was brief, quiet, and closed. But it existed. Someone knew, and someone buried it. Literally. I printed the article and ran straight to the detective working my parents' case. He barely looked at it before pushing it back across the table. "It's hearsay," he said. Nothing conclusive. I begged him, told him about the bones, the crawl space, the tape, the diary, but they had no legal way to link it all. "Even if your parents did hide a child," he said, "there's no evidence of foul play. And the remains are unconfirmed. Could be anything. Unconfirmed." It was me, her, but I realized then that the law wouldn't save me. No one would. Because on paper, I'm just another girl with a trauma history and a prescription bottle. No one sees the truth. No one sees her. But she sees me every moment, every breath. And now she's getting bolder. I woke up 3 days ago and my phone wallpaper had changed to a photo I don't remember taking. It's me and my parents at the lake we never visited. The one from Ellis's letters. I'm smiling. They're smiling. But my reflection in the lake? It's her. Yesterday, a teacher called me Isabel. Laughed it off. Said he mixed me up with someone else. Today, my foster guardian asked if I'd dyed my hair. Said it looked darker, more like it used to be. I didn't dye it. She did, because she's inside now, leaking through, replacing me inch by inch. And I'm running out of space. Running out of time. I made a list this morning. 2 columns. Things I remembered. The second column is growing. She's winning, and I think she wants me to see. To know, because last night I found another letter tucked under my pillow, in handwriting that was almost mine. "You were never meant to have this life. I was the first. I was the one who waited. You were the mistake they tried to fix. But now I'm fixing it back. No more switching places. No more pretending. Soon, it'll be like you never existed at all, and at the bottom, scrawled in thick ink, 'Welcome home, Isabel.' But here's the thing, if I disappear, if she finishes what she started, there'll be no one left to remember the truth. No one left to say I was here, that I was someone. So I've started writing everything down, documenting it, every shift, every glitch, every time she pushes further in, because maybe she'll win, but maybe, just maybe, someone will find this and know that I was real, even if she takes my body, even if she takes my name, even if the whole world forgets me. I won't forget myself. Not yet. By now the line between me and her has nearly dissolved. I wake up in rooms I didn't fall asleep in. I find myself humming lullabies I don't know. Sometimes I look in the mirror and she looks back first. The girl who once whispered my name from the shadows is now sitting inside my bones, watching, smiling. But I'm not done yet. She thinks she's winning, thinks she's erasing me like chalk off the slate of this life, one name tag, one memory, one heartbeat at a time. And truthfully, she's close. Too close. I feel her when I blink. Like if I keep my eyes closed just a second too long, she'll step forward and I'll step back forever. But I've learned something. She's not as whole as she pretends to be. She's angry, she's powerful, but she's still broken. And broken things leave cracks. That's how I found it. The last piece. I was in the attic again. My attic, her attic, our attic, I guess. Searching for something, anything that still belonged solely to me. There, behind the insulation and the dead memories, was an old metal toolbox. Inside a tape recorder, rusted at the corners, different from the others. This one didn't have a label. It had a coda. T on 1. I pressed play. It wasn't her voice. It wasn't mine either. It was my father's. He sounded young, nervous. The recording was rough, static, riddled, but I could make out pieces. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We were only trying to help. One child, we only wanted one. The other, she wouldn't stop screaming, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't listen. Said she had dreams of drowning. Said the walls whispered. We didn't know which one was which anymore. They started copying each other. playing games. One would cry and blame the other. One would lie and wear her name. We took her to the doctor. They said it was disassociation. Twins sometimes do this, but it wasn't that. We could feel it. She was wrong. The night it happened, Caroline stayed downstairs. I went up. I told her to stop. Told her we loved her, but we had to make a choice. She said, "You're choosing the imposter." And then she bit me, clawed my arm. She laughed. "La you jerked." I panicked. I grabbed the blanket and I didn't mean to. But by the time she stopped moving, I already knew. We buried her in the crawl space. Told ourselves it was mercy. That we were saving the one who deserved to live. My hands trembled so hard, I nearly dropped the recorder. They didn't just erase her. They murdered her. And they weren't even sure which one of us she was. All these years I thought I was the one who lived because I was chosen. Loved, real. But maybe I was the imposter. Maybe I was the one who was never supposed to stay. Or maybe, just maybe, neither of us was ever meant to survive that house. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't fight her with my fists. Couldn't outpossess a ghost in my own skin. But I could play her game. I could give her what she wanted. On my terms. So I set the stage. I went back to the place it all began, Isobel's room. It had been sealed again by the authorities, but I still had the old brass key. I waited until after midnight, when the world was asleep and the house hummed with silence. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first, lavender and dust like old dreams. I laid everything out on the floor, the drawings, the tape, the photos that kept changing, the diary pages she'd written in her spiraling script. And I brought one last thing, the mirror, the one I had smashed, but hadn't, the one that refused to break. I placed it upright against the wall, sat cross-legged in front of it, lit a single candle. Then I spoke, not to her reflection, to her. "Isabel, you win." Nothing happened at first. Just flickering flame and the slow tick of the wall clock. Then the glass began to ripple. And she stepped through, not like a horror movie, no shrieking violins, no shriveled corpse. She looked just like me, but somehow before. Like a memory given flesh, she was calm, her hands folded, her eyes not angry but sad. "I was waiting," she said. I nodded. "I know." She took a step forward. The floor didn't creak. She didn't cast a shadow. "I just wanted my life back." "I know." Her eyes welled, but the tears didn't fall. It was cold. It was so dark. "I'm sorry." She crouched before me. Her hand touched mine on skin. "Can I come in now?" And that's when I did it. I nodded. Yes, but not without a price. Because in my other hand, hidden behind my back, was the second recorder, the one with the confession. Still playing, still recording, connected straight to the cloud, linked to every device I had. Synced, backed up, shared. The file would upload to the police server, the news sites, the internet, everywhere. She could erase me, but I could make sure the truth never disappeared. As she leaned forward, I whispered one last thing. "You'll have to live with it now." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Then she looked down, at the recorder, at the blinking red light, and something changed. Her smile cracked like ice. She lunged, grabbed the device, but it was too late. Uploaded, sent, broadcast. She screamed. Not with rage, with fear. The mirror behind her rippled again. Only now it wasn't a doorway. It was a vortex, a vacuum, a place trying to pull her back. She turned to run, but I stood first. "You wanted to take my life," I said. "Then take all of it." Because now the world would know. Now she wasn't a secret anymore. She was a murder, and she would never be able to wear my face without carrying the weight of that truth. She screamed again. One last time, and the mirror shattered. For real this time. Glass like snow. Silence like a gunshot. She was gone. And I was still here. Or maybe not. Maybe what crawled out of that mirror after the scream wasn't entirely me. Maybe I left part of myself behind, tangled in guilt and grief and glass. But the world believes I'm me. The trial against my parents made national news. The tape went viral. I testified, cried, told them everything. Well, not everything, just enough. The rest, that's mine to keep. Or hers, Sometimes I still see her, in reflections that shouldn't be. In photos that come out just slightly wrong. In dreams that end with me gasping awake, unsure of which girl I am. But I remind myself I'm the one who told the story. And stories, true stories, are stronger than ghosts. So if you're reading this now, know that I was real, that I existed, that I refused to be forgotten. And if one day you hear tapping at your window at 3:12 a.m., don't answer, because she's still looking for a way back.
Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.